delay. There's some problem with the connection of the audio video. I hope you can hear me now and see me also. So very good morning, and rather afternoon actually today. So yes, it's fine, thank you. Right, so I think Arun Sharma is also joining us immediately within 1 or 2 minutes. So tab tak, and yes, thank you everybody for confirming, and the voice is fine. So we will just start off. So now see, today's session we are going to be talking about tips of group discussion, interview, and written ability test, etc. in short, and how you have to start your preparation for it. So that is basically the focus. And video is not visible, Shivam. Is the video visible to the others? I hope so. Yeah. So right. So as I was saying, yeah, video is visible. Thank you. Thanks for confirming. Yeah. So those for those whom it's not visible, just refresh. I think it'll show. All right. So and yeah, all of you have been yeah, just the face cam is visible. That's right, Saurabh, because I'm not writing anything on my screen, so therefore I'm not shared my screen. And yeah, we'll talk about the kind of questions, etc. We will be talking about, yes, all of you have been muted, Anupam, so whatever you want to ask, you can put in the uh, panel, the chat that we have here. And apart from that, first let's just start the talk, and let's start discussing as to what all you have to start preparing. All right. So for your interview, there are many kinds of questions that are asked, your past, present, etc. And Sharma sir will be talking in detail about it. Let me talk about first as to how to start your preparation for your group discussion, even for your analytical written test, or what we call it as the written ability test, or your essay writing, which is a very important part of the interview. So after interview, your written test, or your essay writing, etc., or your group discussion. So how do you start your preparation? So first of all, I would be wanting all of you to be knowing the latest what is happening in the country, because a lot of topics from current affairs, that is something that is part of your written ability. So something about obviously the corona and its numerous strains, its effect on Indian economy, its effect on the world economy, how the world economy has changed after the pandemic and things like that. That is something which was very important. The elections that have happened recently, so again, the US elections, or the Brexit as it was in Britain, or the important, what happened in Afghanistan, and the role of the United Nations. Is it still relevant? Things like that, could be part of your essay writing, or your analytical written ability, or your written VAT, as we call it, the written ability test. So these are things that you should be focusing on. So your and important issues also, the topics can be divided into general topic, specific topics. General topics like write something about poverty. Now, if you have to write something about poverty, or you have to write something about Indian economy, now this is a generic topic. In this case, you have to just start off that the general tenets, the general principles of how it started. So any kind of writing, you start with an introduction of the topic, the main body in which you give the explanation, and also the analysis. And the analysis will comprise of the pros and the cons, the positives and the negatives. And you can give examples if you feel like, definitely, and end with a conclusion. Some topics don't end with a conclusion. So in that case, you can give, the plan of action, suggestion, etc. That can be taken into account. So this is the basic format of any what you call as essay writing, or written ability test, or analytical ability. But if you're given, so this was a general thing. Now if you're given a specific issue to address, so then in that case, you just immediately start off with that issue. But if you have to decide between two issues, whether this was good or bad, In that case, please don't immediately say that this was a good thing or this was a bad thing, because otherwise what happens, if you've already given your decision, then you've actually closed the platform for further discussion or for further writing. So in case it is a topic which is specific and it is between two things, so then in that case, develop both the things, talk about both the things, talk about the pros and cons, and then try to merge it and talk about your views and what you support or what you don't support about it. Okay, so that's how you go about a topic which has a choice. And some topics are open ended, so you really can't conclude them. So in that case, again, your plan of action for the future, and just give your suggestions. So something like the way ahead for Indian economy or something like that. So in that case, you have to give your plan of action or suggestion for the future. So we are talking about general topics, we are talking about specific topics, we are talking about two kinds of topics in which you have to make a choice which is better or which do you support. And then the final kind of topic, which is an abstract topic. All right. So an abstract topic will be something just out of the blue, even something as crazy as, in my last session, I was also talking about it, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And, if that kind of a topic is given to you, so then how do you analyze an abstract topic? So then you try to think a little laterally and try to develop it. You try to develop it and talk about all the nuances, all the ideas that come to your mind when you are talking about that little concept of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So you can talk about that when you think of this line, it reminds you of your first few days in school and how you memorized this poem, and you came back home and your parents were so proud of you when you recited this poem to them. And Twinkling of the Stars also reminds you of how small we are in this vast universe, whereas the twinkling of the star also tells you how important each little bit of light is there. And the twinkling of the stars reminds you of days spent maybe at your grandparents' house or in your childhood home on the rooftop, staring at the sky with your friends, with your family, with your sisters, brothers, and just trying to discuss and talk about the innumerable things that you had to talk about way back then. The twinkling of the stars brings back beautiful memories when you stayed up at night staring at the sky or just sleeping under it. So you have to develop the topic if it is an abstract topic, and the more you can think laterally, and then you have to build it back again and close it like a story. So that is how you go about your you know written ability, or even if it's a group discussion, even if it's a essay writing, whatever we call it. All right, so this is just for starters what I wanted to talk about. And Sharma sir is here. He'll start off with the preparation, the interview topic, and then we'll come back again. Okay.
So hi, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. A very warm good afternoon to all of you in a very cold, wintry day in Delhi. And I hope all of you are able to hear us and see us here. And of course, the key part of your CAT prep process, and this is something that you should realize ideally right from the start. And maybe I guess most of you are going for interviews in the next 2-3 months, but but if there are a few who are looking at interviews of the next 12 to 15 months, and even for you guys who are going for your B school interviews in the next 2-3 months, you should also realize that when you're talking about interview prep, there are three kinds of three timeline wise. There are three kinds of interview prep that happens. One is short-term interview prep. The three kinds of interview prep that happens essentially. One is short-term interview prep, medium-term interview prep, and long-term interview prep. And in my view, the short-term interview prep is something which is somewhere between 15 to 30 days of preparation. Around 15 days, maybe 15 to 21 days of preparation is what short-term interview prep is. The moment you move beyond 25 days to around 60 days of preparation, you are in medium-term interview prep. And when you go beyond 25, 60, 90, I think all of this is medium-term. And long-term, typically, I think of long-term more as a 1 year plus interview prep process, and there's a continuum between long-term and medium-term here. So as you keep going closer to a year, from 90 days, 120 days, 150 days, you are more or less more and more going towards long-term, between medium-term and long-term. But as you start crossing a year, you are exclusively in long-term interview prep. And what you need to understand about these three things, or these three dimensions, or these three timelines about interview prep, is that when you're talking about obviously when you're talking about short-term interview prep, the focus of interview prep is only on identifying the questions that will be asked of you. Your biodata is fixed. Your profile is fixed. You don't have any time to change your profile. Your biodata, which is essentially fixed in its dimensions, and you just have to identify the questions, and you prepare how your answers to those questions. You start preparing the answers, and you start ideating कि कौन से क्वेश्चन मेरे को क्या, मेरा लॉजिक क्या होना चाहिए जवाब का, मेरे आंसर का लॉजिक क्या होना चाहिए. That's what you're doing in the short term. In the medium term, specifically when you go to something like 40, 60, 70 days, this is what CAT 22 aspirants, CAT 21 aspirants right now have with you. If you have given CAT 21 and looking at an interview between February, March, April next year, which is when your IIM and all other interviews will happen. The interview process typically takes place between February to April, sometimes till May, but normally in this time zone. You have somewhere between a 60, 90, 120 day framework from your first interview to your last interview right now. So the interview preparation will be defined as medium-term interview preparation for you. And medium-term, of course, this part is also to be done. But apart from this part, you also do a little bit of work around solidifying the concepts, or reviewing, solidify and review whatever is there in your biodata. So that is the other dimension to your prep. Solidify and review your profile or your biodata. You do that in the medium term interview prep zone. And in the long term interview prep, of course, when you're talking about long term, 1 year plus, and for CAT 21 aspirants, of course, this is not relevant for your interviews, which are between February to April. But please remember one thing, that given the age group you guys are in, maybe 20, 22, 25, 27, sub 30 age group, most of you are in the 20s, or late 18s, late teens. So what you need to remember and what you need to understand is that there is I mean, your interviews, I mean, in your life, the role of interviews is going to be relevant for the next 5, 7, 10 years. The role of interviews becomes irrelevant after you reach somewhere. I mean, it becomes more of, I mean, people still recruit you, you'll still go to people for work and jobs. But after 5, 7, 10, 12 years, it is not so dependent on what you say in that interview room. Any interviews that you have mid-career onwards, that means 35 onwards, are not so dependent on what you say and what you are able to convince the interviewer about. It's more about the work, the body of work that you have done from 20 to 35. That identifies helps the interviewer identify you as a potential candidate whom it wants to give that job or that work to, otherwise or does not want to. So it's more dependent on the quality of work you have done in your background, rather than what you say in the interview. But interviews for the first 5, 7 years of your career will depend a lot on that interaction inside that interview room, where you are sitting against 3 or 4 people in the interview on the other side of the table, and they're going to look at you critically and evaluate your potential because in the first 5, 7, 10 years of your career, your interview is based on potential rather than the past. It's based more on potential, more on what you're likely to do. There's more evaluation of potential than at 35 plus. By that time, your potential has to have shown through, etc. So given this fact that next 5, 7, 10 years, you're going to be more or less, most of you are going to be very invested in interview outcomes. It is best to make sure that you also understand that when you prepare for an interview in long term, you actually can modify aspects of your profile. You can modify aspects of your profile uh, for in the context of a year-long preparation. So what happens is that the questions that are going to be asked of you are kind of fixed if you are in the short-term to a medium-term period. But in the long-term period, you can even change the questions that are going to be asked of you by doing stuff, because most of the time the questions are going to be, as we'll come to a slide a little bit later, the questions that are going to be asked of you are going to be of uh, of, uh, uh, of issues that are basically emerging from your profile. So of course, this is a session on this thing, and the first point I wanted to make, which Meenakshi ma'am has also made quite well, is that it's the most critical phase of the process. See, even somebody who's preparing for CAT 22 or 23 or any other exam, he knows that in today's world, because there's so many options of choices, you will have a top call and a bottom call. Even if you get an 80 percentile in CAT and the other critical MBA entrance exams, you will have a top call and a bottom call. And why interviewing skills becomes important is because if you can convert the top call, imagine a 90 percentiler versus a 95 percentiler. So top call of a 95 percentiler will naturally be better than the top call of a 90 percentiler. But the bottom call of a 95 percentiler will be worse than the top call of a 90 percentiler. So why interview skills becomes important is because you can actually bridge this gap of 5 percentile by actually starting to convert your top calls. So it's in a way the most critical phase of the process, because you're not just preparing for the CAT or the exam or an aptitude test. You're preparing for getting into a B school, and the result of CAT only gets fructified if you are good enough to get into or to the based on the institute you actually get to. It's not about what calls you had. It's about what college you go to, right? So as you know, 95, 97, 98 percentile pay. If you're a non-engineer, etc., you might even get a call from IIM Ahmedabad. So if you are able to convert that, so a 95 percentile, a 97 percentile who gets an IIM Ahmedabad call, converts it, is better than 99.8 percentile who does not convert his top 3 calls. So it's as good as that. So that's the whole point. So it's a very critical phase, and I guess all of you realize that, which is why you're here today. So first perspective that you have to understand about an interview, that it's a test of personality, not a test of knowledge. It's a test of personality. It's not a test of knowledge. Knowledge is used to actually put pressure on your personality and see how you react under pressure situations, right? This is how it goes. And typically, most interviews, if you analyze them, you will be able to see that interviews ka and this is how you actually start understanding how to prepare for it. Interviews, the components of an interview can be broken in 2 dimensions, 2 ways. The first dimension is timeline wise. This is not very important to prepare you, or in the medium term. Of course, when you take your interviews, you should know when the interview body starts and when the ice breaking is over. So timeline wise, one way to look at an interview is basically timeline wise. So what happens in an interview essentially is when you enter the room, it's the job of the interview to make you comfortable. So the first 2-3 exchanges between you and him, first 2-3 exchanges between you and him is essentially the ice breaking phase where he's trying to put you into your comfort zone because uh, there are two kinds of interviews that happen. One is the normal interviews, and the other dimension is the stress interviews. The stress interviews में क्या होता है कि stress interview में they don't use the icebreaker phase at all. Their first question might be कि अच्छा you studied from this university, this college, इसका तो reputation बहुत खराब है. That could be the first thing that they ask you, that they say. So they're putting you under the pump, they're putting you under pressure, trying to see how you react to it, your ability to handle it, because your next 20-30 years of life is going to be under stress, under pressure of performance wherever you go, whichever company you work for, whichever career you choose. So they are trying to test that directly. So there's no ice breaking happening here. But stress interviews, as a general, if you look through, you've got 5% stress interviews. 95% interviews are the normal interviews, which will start with an ice breaking, right? So they might say something like something good to you. How are you? Acha, you're coming from Delhi. Delhi is very cold these days. Anything to break the ice, anything to start making you comfortable with the initial this thing. It's like when you're playing a tennis match, the first 5 minutes before the match, you're just hitting balls left and right with the opponent. You're warming up, right? So you might say, "Acha, what did your?" So I remember my Bangalore interview. They asked me how much did you get in 10th and how much did you get in 12th. So when I said 81.8% in 12th, so Professor Premchandar, who was the PGP admissions, he said, "Okay, I'll write that as 82." I said, "Thank you, sir." So that was part of the ice breaking. But the ice breaking, because they are there for a job. The interview panelists for a job. I've sat in hundreds of interview panels. My friends, Amitabh couldn't make it today, I think, and so he is supposed to be here, but uh, yeah, so he got busy, I guess, which is why he's not here today. And even other friends of mine who've been on interview panels of top B schools, we all know this, that we are there for a job. We are not there to have idle conversation with you. So very soon, within the first minute or so, minute to 2 minutes, the moment you are comfortable, the interview goes into the body, and this is where the critical evaluation is done. The body of the interview, the first impressions do make this thing, how you walked in, what is your confidence level when you're walking in. I mean, from the body language, there are a lot of things that are visible. Specifically, the confidence level that you bring into the confidence and self belief that you bring into your body and your gait, and you bring into the room. That is also an indicator of whether I'm talking to a boy or a man.
Right.
So
So Arun,
confidence or
I
self belief.
wanted to talk 1 minute about something. When you were
Yeah.
talking about ice breaking, I just want to add my 2 bits here, that the interview panel is not your enemy. All right. So they are not out there to catch you and trap you and punish you. Now, most of us go into the interview with a mindset that they are trying to trap me and they are trying to corner me and question me about things that I don't want to be asked about. Please don't think that. They are there to assess you on the basis of the information that you have provided to them. So, when they are trying to assess you, obviously they'll be asking you some difficult, some tricky questions, some questions that might make you uncomfortable, but which might be important for them to assess your level or your ability to match up to the kind of peer group that you're going to find there, to match up to the college that you have been selected. So the interview panel is your friend, and you have to accept them like that. If you go with that mindset that I'm going to give my best and I'm going to let my this interview bring out the best in me, and approach each question with a very positive mindset, even if they say that even if it's a stress interview and they say that, oh, you've come from a very bad college, like sir said, or why have you got such less, you enter and the first question is there, that why have you got such less marks in your graduation or in your 10th or 12th, are you not interested in studying? And so you just smile and you say that, sir, I don't think I should be punished for my past mistakes. Yes, I might not have a very good academic record, but I can assure you that there are things which I have done which will make you find that I'm worthy. And when you say that there are things that will make you find that I'm worthy, you have given them a clue to pick up from there and carry on that interview. They may or may not pick up that clue. Now if it's a not a very high stress interview, they will pick up that clue and say, okay, so tell us what makes you worthy, and therein is your chance to make the first impression, right? So those are the things that you have to have up your sleeve, wherein you start the interview on a positive note, even if it began on a negative note. All right, so yes, please, Arun, continue.
Yeah, exactly. And just adding to what Meenakshi ma'am was saying there, just adding to that aspect. Okay, just give me a second. Just adding to that aspect is the fact that when you enter an interview, rather than looking at the interviewers as opponents to you, you should think of them as allies. So if you can bring one of the interview panels, any one or two of them onto your side, you can bring them onto your team during the interview, and they are willing to be there. I mean, as an interviewer, I can tell you that I was more than willing to like a candidate and be on his side, because essentially what happens after you leave the room, these interviewers have a discussion कि इसको कितने marks देने हैं. Do we give him marks so that he gets selected here and now? I decide. The interviews have kind of veto power inside the board, that if you want, we can give him or her so many marks that he or she basically takes up. Okay, yeah, my screen is not visible. Let me just show my screen. So that he or she is basically directly selected, right? So that's one factor that can work. So if you have a couple of allies, if you have been able to create a couple of guys in the interview room, or even one person in the interview room who's your ally, and he or she has liked you because of the way you've spoken, because of your personality. So this like is not going to be because of prejudices or emotions, but it's because of what you said and what the interchange was. So he will be able to convince the others to give you a little bit more marks than what they were giving them. It's very important to think about the interviewers not as the opponents, but rather as potential allies whom you are looking for to ally with you inside the interview. And essentially, the interview body is where the decision is more or less made, the body of the interview. And if depending uh, on ice breaking, depending on the length of the interview body in a 10-12 minute interview, which is typical of a lot of B schools, 1 to 2 minutes of ice breaking, around 8-9 minutes of interview body, and around 1 to 2 minutes of any phase of an interview. In a 40-minute interview, couple of minutes of interview ice breaking, 30-35 minutes of interview body, and 2-3 minutes of closing. The timeline might vary depending on how long the interview board is spending with you. So timelines will vary, but essentially coming to 80's question, what might be some strong reasons to defend poor grades in school? Meenakshi, would you like to take that question? Defending bad grades?
Yes,
Uh,
so
uh,
when we are talking about bad grades, in school and especially in 10th and 12th, you're like 16 years old and 18 years old. And you can always come back and tell them that's and say, so let's take two scenarios. One in which you've got a 10th and 12th, which was an average 60, 70%, and your graduation score was 80% plus. So immediately you have a, very, very strong point here that yes, in my 10th and 12th, I was a happy-go-lucky child, and I was into games, I was into other things, not only into academics, and therefore, yes, I was not a person who was learning by rote and just memorizing the answers and writing them as the teachers might have expected. So I did get less points. But if you see, there has been a change in my life, and my life can be divided into this those two aspects, in which one I was a happy-go-lucky teenager, and in the other in which I evolved in my graduation when I took responsibility for my career. Because still school I was just obeying rules, still school I was just finishing those 12 years of education, did not give much thought to it. But when I joined my graduation degree, I realized that I have to take my life in my own hands. And you can see the difference in my grades, and therefore the change has already begun in my life. And I further, and this call that I've got today, yeah, further corroborates the process of change, that yes, I'm worthy to show this change in my attitude, in my way of life, and in case I get selected in your college. So you defend it like that. In case till your 10th 12th were very good and your graduation was not so great, then you have to again justify as to why your heart and soul was not there into your academics, why maybe you were into other things. Say I know of a person, one of our students who is a great chess player, and maybe his academic grades are not so good in college because he was pursuing his passion of chess or whatsoever. So yeah, you have a passion, you can talk about that also. And just in case you don't have anything, right, your 10th 12th is bad, your graduation is also not too great, then in that case you talk about that this call that I have got is the change in perspective that I have brought in the last 6 months in my life. And then you talk about some few things that you might have planned or you or actually started doing, which are showing the change. So this helps you. See, you have to tell them what you've done. You will be judged according to your past, your present, mostly. What you plan to do in future is something that you believe in, they might not. So your past and present has to be very, very strong. In case it is not, then you have to make sure that your future does make an impact upon them. So that's how you'll plan your answers. Right, Arun, you
Yeah,
want
so
to add?
that brings me to this slide, which is I think the most important thing you need to understand, that when you look at agenda-wise components of an interview, the first dimension of components of an interview I showed you was timeline-wise. That at different timelines, what is the theme of the interview? How does the interview move to? A stress interview starts with a stress question and continues to put you under the pump. And please remember, they are looking at your personality, not your knowledge. So it's perfectly okay in interview. You can qualify an interview by saying, I don't know 5 times also. So, but what they are trying to see is that under pressure you're going to lie, under pressure you're going to crack. That's what they're going to look at inside a stress interview. And even any normal interview, by default, by the definition of it being an interview, there's always some stress involved, because when you are in a stage, as I told you, in the first 5 7 years of your career, what you say in the interview room is going to be very very critical to identifying or to your selection or rejection in the interview. But agenda wise, Meenakshi ma'am talked about two of these P's. This is the past, this is the present, and she also revealed ahead for you the future. So an interview component is essentially built agenda wise on testing your past, on looking at your past, talking to you about your past, asking you to defend, asking you to be proud of things that you've done, or shameful of things what you've done. So trying to help you, or asking you to defend certain parts of it. What is the present? The present is defined as something which is, so if you're going for a March 2022 interview, if you're going for an interview in March 22, your present will be defined as minus 6 months from that date. So September 22 to March 22, 21 to March 22 will be defined as your present timeline or your present time phase. So anything that you've been doing during this time, there'll be questions based on this. There'll be questions based on the timeline behind this. So there'll be questions based on this timeline, the past. So that would be before September 21 to the last 10 years maybe. So 2011 to 2021. Of course, two major points of this will be your 10th score and your 12th performance. But also a part of this will also be your graduation performance if you have already graduated specifically. But if you are in graduation, then graduation will be part of your present, or your performing graduation will be part of the present. So that's the second part of this. And then you also have a greenfield area, which is the future. So future is again divided into short-term future, medium-term future, and long-term future. So the short-term future is the next 2 years. next 2 to 3 years. The medium-term future is the next 5 to 7 years, and the long-term future is 7 plus, leading all the way to 20 years. So naturally, when you talk about poor performance here, the justification of the poor performance has to be on the basis of some change that you have instituted here, and something that you're going to do. But what I'm going to do is basically a promise. So they will not select you on promises. They'll tell you कि अच्छा next year करके आना फिर लेंगे तुमको. So there has to be some change at least in the last 6 months to a year, where you have actually exhibited a passion or exhibited something that has, or created a passion or created something that has helped you become the new person that you are trying to project. So there to the question about how do we defend bad performance in the past. See, you already got penalized for it in your marks that are allocated in the weightage. So there's already a penalty that you're paying for it. So the best way to do inside the interview, the best option is to own up, or if there's a valid excuse or valid reason why this happened, then you throw that up. Otherwise, it's best to own up. 95% case mein, the average academic performance in 10th, 12th, and graduation is completely because of you. 10th, 12th might be also because of home environments and other things, because you are smaller then. But what you do as an 18-year-old in your exams is completely based on what you did and how you prepared. 10th में चलो तुम्हारे दोस्त के मम्मी पापा भी बैठे थे उनके साथ पढ़ने के लिए और तुम्हारे नहीं बैठे थे, you were having a little bit of ball with your life, it's fine. But graduation is definitely something they'll look at very, very closely, because if they want to see academic performance in the next 2 years, they'll definitely look at it here. So the best way, if you have something poor right through or in one or two of these, even if you have a poor graduation but better earlier, a lot of people have good 10, 12 but a bad graduation percentage. The best option is to own up and then show the change here, show the transformation here. That's the best this thing. So past, present, future, and the other P. This is the PPPFR model. So according to me, if you think of any agenda, any interview, my thought process of any interview process is essentially a test of PPPFR. So this P was the past, this P is the present, this P is the future. So I'm also bothered about what you want to do. And this thing, although that is, typically why the past becomes important, why the present becomes important, is because at your age, if I'm testing your potential, I need to know what you have actually achieved in the past, right? So, it's very simple. If you're interviewing two batsmen to play for your cricket team, X and Y, X says I will score 200 runs tomorrow. I'll score 200 runs tomorrow. A lot of people asking this question: why is the past so much of a drag on us? So X tells you I'll score 200 runs in the match tomorrow, and Y says that my name is Virat Kohli. So whom will you select for the match? If you were to select one of them, X is some random person whom you don't know, and he's promising you 200 runs tomorrow. And Y is not making any promises; just telling you that his name is this. So obviously, the choice will always be this. You'll always choose him as the number one batsman. After that, if you've got room and you've got nobody else as good coming in, then you might take this guy. But broadly, you will look at the past and the present, what he's been doing till now before you accept the promise. So similarly, if you are going into an interview with a promise of the future, कि मैं आगे चल के बहुत अच्छा करने वाला हूं, मेरे को अहमदाबाद का डिग्री दे दीजिए, I'm Bangalore का डिग्री दे दीजिए, nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody's going to listen to you. They'll only listen to you when they see something in your past or your present that shows that if I give him this seat, he'll do justice to it, right? But for the interview, everybody can become brilliant and everybody can become excellent. and promise you excellence, etc. But that's not how it works. Nobody's going to believe you in that way. So past, present, future. What is the other P? This P is your personality. So in this context, I also want to see your personality. So when I evaluate your personality, I want to evaluate your ability to not just speak, but also your attitude towards life. And there's something called the big five personality factors. There's something called the big five factors of personality, which includes your emotional stability, your openness to change, right? Therefore, the 4 5 factors on which they evaluate you typically. Your emotional stability, or how emotional you are, your openness to change and experience, right? I'm not remembering the other three, but they look at essentially when I mean, there's a lot of research around personality, and they came up with 5 big factors of personality. I'll just give you that. So they are definitely looking at these things when they are the big 5 personality traits. Just give me a second.
Well, one of them is
Yeah,
agreeable
extroversion.
and extroversion and introversion.
Extroversion versus introversion. Then you've got conscientiousness. What is conscientiousness? Conscientiousness is your ability to take care of the minute things in your life, the small things in your life. And the last one is agreeableness. That means how good you are with your interpersonal skills. So agreeableness, your conscientiousness, your extroversion, your openness to change and experience, and emotional. How emotional? This is written as neuroticism. So if you are very emotional, you are neurotic in nature. So that's negative for you. So these 5 things they look at inside the personality. Whatever I mean, and this is global research, and across the world, people have researched on personality and said that these are the big 5 personality traits. And if you can handle, and if somebody has got all these in the positive, so somebody is high on openness to experience and change, somebody is high on extroversion, somebody is high on conscientiousness, very strong conscientiousness, somebody is very strong on agreeableness. That means he's very easy to get along with and gets along with people very easily. And somebody is negative on emotions. That means somebody is not driven by emotions. So these are the 5 angles on which your personality is broadly tested, right? And so if you can show these 5, you can actually evaluate when you're preparing in a medium term in your interview for your interview. You can actually evaluate which one of this is the strength and which one of this is a weakness for you. So personality questions: name 3 strengths, name 3 weaknesses. These things can actually get answered through this. So the PPPFR model of interviewing is personality, past, present, future, and the R is randomness. So there's going to be some kind of randomness in every interview. So I might ask you what is the longest river in India. Somebody else might ask you what is the length of the Ganges. और third इंटरव्यू में you might be asked कि Ganges कितने स्टेट से फ्लो करती है बताओ इंडिया में. So that is something you can't control. So the randomness is completely random. और तुम अगर Ganges कितने स्टेट से फ्लो करती हो नहीं बता सकते हो इंडिया में, तो it does not matter so much to the interview selection. What they are looking at is कि does this when you don't know an answer to a question, how does your personality react? So random questions are again asked to measure how your personality reacts to pressure. So basically, that's what it is all about. It's that's the basic model of an interview agenda. And when you're preparing for the medium term, I think you need to closely evaluate each of these. When I said that you have time to modify, you don't have time to change the questions they're going to ask you, but you have enough time to solidify these aspects of your this thing. So past, present, future, क्या क्या क्वेश्चन आ रहे हैं तुम्हारे पास? तुम्हारा फ्यूचर, ऑफ कोर्स फ्यूचर में three common questions are short term future, medium term future, and long term future. These are three common questions that they will ask you, and you should have ready answers to this कि तुम यहाँ पे क्या करना चाहते हो अपने लाइफ का. Are you a random missile or are you a guided missile? This is something you have to show the interviewers, right? And the personality aspect you have to try to evaluate. You have to be beyond something which, I mean, I think the most common weakness I hear from people is something like uh, is something like procrastination. I mean, that's the most common this thing I've seen in the last 20 years of my training career. Everybody writes procrastination as because it's a nice kind sounding kind of name, and everybody writes procrastination as a weakness. But if you go deeper from into your analysis of your personality, you can actually come up with a lot of strengths and weaknesses, etc. So your time has to be spent on this. पास्ट का टाइम स्पेंडिंग दो तरह से होगा पास्ट पे प्रिपेयर करने में. एक होगा कि कौन से क्वेश्चंस आ रहे हैं, उसका क्या आंसर देने वाला है. 10th में बहुत खराब स्कोर था, ओन अप करने वाले हो कि कुछ एक्सक्यूज देने वाले हो, ये डिसाइड करो. व्हाट इज गोइंग टू बी अ स्ट्रेटजी टू दैट क्वेश्चन. अप एंड डाउन एकेडमिक करियर, ओन अप करने वाले हो कि कुछ एक्सक्यूज देने वाले हो, एक्सक्यूज जेन्युइन है कि ऐसे फेक डाल रहे हो. So just keep evaluating that. Take your positions so that inside the interview you are ready with your answers to these questions. And the other aspect of past preparation will also be your, specifically if you're in college or just part of past or college not working. So other parts of your past and present preparation will also be your subjects that you are studying, because they'll ask you questions from your subjects. So while when they ask you a very deep question, you can't answer it, it's fine. But if they ask you a basic definitional question, राइट, तो मैकेनिकल इंजीनियर हो, तुमसे पूछा कि लेथ मशीन क्या क्या कर सकती है, तुमको नहीं पता है, तो देन इट्स अ सैड स्टोरी ऑफ योर एकेडमिक्स. तुम 9.5 पॉइंटर भी होगे, 9.5 जीपीए होगा तुम्हारा, but they are not going to accept any knowledge from you, right? So there was this case of a student of ours last year who was working at Adobe, and he was asked the full form of PDF, and he did not know. He was working for Adobe for 2 years, and he was asked the full form of PDF, and he couldn't answer that question in my Bangalore interview. So that's something which is a tragedy then, right? So this is what we need to understand, and don't bother too much about chances. Questions like Hiru's question, we are open to questions now. Hiru's question, like what are my chances at ABC, etc. 1-0 score and 6 score in slot 3. See, as I said, this guy who had this answer to the PDF, he couldn't crack the Bangalore interview because obviously the interviewer lost interest in कि Adobe में काम कर रहा है, PDF नहीं बता पा रहा है. The interviewer lost interest in him, and he was a top student. He had a 120 plus score in the last year's CAT, so very high percentile, etc. Very brilliant student right through school, college, but this one question spoiled it for him. So chances evaluate mat karo, take care of what is the controllables, and nobody can give you any guarantees. So very often we ask questions ki mera hoga ki nahi hoga. I'm not here to give you guarantees, right? वो तो उस दिन कैसे coin land करेगा तुम्हारे ऊपर ही. So you have to make sure that you go through the process properly, and based on the process you execute what is required to be executed, right? So the same guy, when he went to his IIM Ahmedabad interview, he was able to impress the interviewers and he was able to get through. So he got through Ahmedabad, Calcutta, but Bangalore, when this disaster happened with him. So you have to control the controllables, focus on the controllables. So we have a gd-pi program at Mindworks. That gd-pi program, it's going to be conducted by me, Meenakshi ma'am, and 3 more people from my IIM Bangalore batch who have been IIM Bangalore interviewers and top B school interviews. One of them is an SPGN, faculty at SPGN also. So Manish Konkar, Randhir Mishra, Amitabh Singh is also joining us. Randhir and Manish were there last year also with us. Amitabh Singh is also joining us, and of course we have the whole backup team at Mindworks, which consists of Arun Chaturvedi, who is I am Ahmedabad NITI graduate, and you also have people from FMS and other top B schools who are going to be there with us. And these things we are going to look at. So this program will be starting immediately after that, and we are also having some sessions before that, some pre sessions. If you join now, we'll give you some pre-recorded sessions and some pre-programmed sessions which will be there. So you can of course contact Mindworks. This is the phone number. You can contact the Mindworks phone number, and of course I'll be guiding you through your interview preparation. Me and ma'am and this whole team will be guiding you through your interview preparation during this time, right? Including the writing of your answers. The answers are key at this stage. How you write. Some B schools are very elaborate forms, so you need to, and most of your interview comes from that form. So these are going to be important. Sanket asked, how much do appearances matter in gd-pi rounds? See, if you're in gd-pi, you need to be well dressed and you need to be well groomed, because if you're not, then they will take you with a pinch of salt. कि इतने serious event के लिए अगर serious नहीं है तो मैं इसको क्यों लूँगा, right?
Yeah, it's just giving more respect to the call that you have got. So you have to be shaved,
more
you have
respect
to
to
be
the
dressed
situation.
neat. You don't have to look like Miss Universe or Mr. Universe for that matter, but just be normal, be clean, be wearing clean clothes, acceptable formals. That's it. Okay.
Poor English communication, Gorak, is not such a big handicap. You can you can
Just
speak
speak
in
small sentences, Gorak. Sorry to interrupt you, Arun. Just speak in small sentences so that you'll have more control over what you say. You don't have to be extremely fluent in English. That's fine. We have talked to people who have said that sometimes we see that students who are struggling with English, but they have got a call. We do give them preference. So, it's not a negative for you. But at the same time, you should be making an effort right now to, at least be speaking basic sentences which you might be asked to answer. Okay. And Kritika is asking, should girls wear suit? That's up to you, Kritika. You can wear a suit, you can wear a shalwar kameez or a sari, whatever you are comfortable in. You can wear a blazer and a pant also if you want. All right.
ठीक है.
Same goes for the guys.
Will a degree from BITS Pilani prove good pass? Not necessarily one. See, a good pass is not one event. It's a series of events and executions that you have had, right? So it's perfectly okay. Derek says, should I mention my YouTube channel, blog, and interview? Yes, you should definitely, because it's a big. It's going to be a big positive for you, right? Sanket is asking, can I get coaching guidance, study material, or notes for MHCET? Target is JBIMS. Yeah, we are doing a level lower level course starting on 7th of January. So that is a course for lower level. By lower level, we mean the easier exams where solving is faster. So we are not taking over the CAT level in that. So we're calling it internally. We are calling it level 1 aptitude course. So you can join that program, Sanket. I'll be running that program. 7 January से वो start हो रहा है. So you can join that. उसमें MHCET भी cover होगा distinctly.
And Harsh,
Do we
yes,
have panel for XLR? Yes, we have a panel for XLR also.
in English. There's asking if it is only in English, GDPI, even the written ability and the interview has to be in English. Don't put in Hindi words. Avoid, or any vernacular words.
Can we speak about a startup? Yes, you can. And GDP, the PI this year will be mostly online, but be prepared for both. How to describe gap years in PI? I think it's best is to own up the truth. There's no fun in trying to speak lies, because you'll be this thing. With respect to clean shaved or having a beard, if you have a regular beard, then you can keep it. But if it's a stubble which is 3 days old, then it's not right. Right? So otherwise, if you have a beard, proper beard, you've got a Virat Kohli kind of beard, keep it. Don't this thing. Right? Teacher at UPSC Academy and Shekhar, will it backfire? No, it will not. You talk about whatever you've done. Talk about how it helped you. Yeah, we'll definitely inform on YouTube channel when we are starting the course. Priyanshu, if you're doing a BBA, then you should try your hand at MBA during your final year. Don't create a gap year. नहीं होगा final year में तो year after final year करना.
Okay, Soumya is asking an important question. If you are weak in GK, is it still possible to crack GDPI? Yes, Soumya, it's possible, but you do have a month and approximately 2 months, in fact, in your hands. So why can't you just brush up your current affairs? Thoda sa pad lo, just read a little bit about what is happening around the world, and you can tell them that I have not been following general knowledge very, very closely, but yeah, I do know some things. So you can excuse yourself, but just try a little. Just don't leave everything. Just try a little bit. You still have time. Okay. So again, your general knowledge preparation will be like India, and so it's like local and global. As in India, it will be a local. Then again, your state, your place where you belong. You need to know specific things about those things. And in global perspective, international and other countries. So the current affairs will also be like local and global. The static GK will be also local and global. Just try to prepare in that manner, whatever you can, at least in this less time that we have, because that will give you more confidence also when you go for your GDPI rounds.
Friend startup you can mention, but take some salary slip or something from him if you are using that. Chalo. So I think next year GDPI, long-term GDPI, and change your profile, improve aspects of your profile, specifically the soft part of your profile. एक hard part होता है, which is which college you went to, which course you did, etc. But soft part होता है तुम्हारा personality क्या है, तुम्हारा interest क्या है, hobbies क्या है, passions क्या है, उसको change करो. ठीक है? How to address the part when it comes to institute's expectation from us. Institute's expectation from us, you just make sure that you do your best at your, as a student you're expected to do the best in your academics, so you just make sure that this thing will be there. How long is the GDPI course and what are the fees? The fees I think are 11,999, Pranav. And for details of the length etc, मुझे exact counseling structure नहीं याद है. You can call up this number that I've shown, that I've put on screen. They will tell you about that. VAT tips Meenakshi ma'am has given the start. Zaid.
I'll just go through that. The first 5 minutes I've talked about VAT only. Okay.
Yeah, Harshal, I think what you will say for 8 years experience is that you say that you want to go into more experimentation with your career and more adventure with your career. In the PSU bank, you can spend the rest of your life. Since you have only one life, you want to achieve more. So that's perfectly okay. I'm कौन से I'm the director है आजकल मुझे याद नहीं है. But Devashish Chatterjee, who's one of the youngest directors that I am, he was working after an SSC qualification as a government clerk, and from there he went on to become a SBI PO officer, and then he went on to go to IIM Calcutta for a PhD. So when a director of IIM can do that, you can definitely do that. ठीक है, चलो. If you Sarthak's question, if you fumble up in a follow-up question, just get the interview back on track by doing well in the next question. Right? That's what it is. ठीक है. We have answered this question, Vishal. 10, 12 is not good. How to answer that? We have talked about it. Why MBA का etc. का वीडियोस है मेरे YouTube चैनल पे, उसको देख लो. हम लोग उसको क्यूरेट कर देते हैं फिर से. So we'll just release that on the post on the YouTube channel.
There's a playlist about GDPI and all that, so we've got quite a few videos there. We'll get more added on that.
Thanks, Shekhar. Shekhar says, had been your student during my CSAT days. Those basics helped me to have confidence and crack that. Good to hear, Shekhar. So were you my student at Vajira? So those were my CSAT days also. But my CSAT days are returning. I'm starting a CSAT batch in first week January. So 7 January se wo bhi start ho raha hai. So those of you looking for CSAT can actually follow that course. ठीक है?
Alisha,
The YouTube
YouTube
channel name is Arun
channel
Sharma Mindworks.
Arun Sharma Mindworks is the YouTube channel.
Chalo. Thank you so much. Yeah, even if you're doing an undergrad program in IIM Rohtak, do aim for CAT 22 Stuti. Try to get to this thing, a better college. Yeah, Vishal, you can talk about self health definitely. Chalo, thank you so much, everybody. Bye bye. Thanks for
Thank you.
being there.
Back again.
And this session will also be uploaded on the YouTube channel, so you can watch it whatever you missed there. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.